Hello and welcome back to Slick Willy Flies. So what I have in the vise right now is a caddis fly. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's a really nasty, windy, rainy day. So it's a nice day to tie flies. We're approaching that time of year where we're going to be able to use a lot of these dries, and I got to load up on some dries. I got a couple examples. I'm mostly a streamer guy, you all know, but I don't have an aversion to fishing a streaking caddis. I tie all kind of different dries. Here's a nice little parachute fly. I tie them all the way down to a size 14 and a size 16. I tie them in tans and olives and browns. I really love tying spent spinners. What I mostly tie is, I call them fishing flies. I don't really tie those ultra realistic flies. I have a ton of respect for the guys that tie those, but it's not really my deal. I don't like tying flies that take too long because I know that if I take a long time tying a fly, I'm not going to cast it. So this was on a size 10 hook, a little bit big, but I like starting big. I'll start with a 10 or an 8 and work my way down. I'll work to a 12 and a 14 and a 16 till I start getting bites. So I'm just gonna set this aside, and again I'm gonna put a size 10 in because it'll be easier for the video. So I'm fishing the widest gap size 10 I could find, which in this case isn't actually, some people argue it's maybe not the best choice for a caddis. A lot of people like a more straight hook shank for a caddis. This has a bit of a curve to it, but I'm more interested in that wide gap. So hope you guys have your cocktail and let's get in on it. Today is May 1st, holiday in Sweden. And yesterday was, we call it Valborg. It's the celebration of that the seasons have come to an end, and it's a big celebration day in Sweden. We had beautiful weather yesterday. It was perfect. We had about 10 or 11 degrees Celsius and sunny skies. Today we're at like 4 or 5 degrees Celsius and rain. So today feels like almost like we took a step backward in the seasons here. But that's okay. We can tie flies. So I'm just putting a little base of black thread on. Now I'm going to put a little bit of wire on. I'm using gold wire, but any kind of wire will work. And I actually I have a cutter just for wire so I don't destroy my nice scissors. So all I'm going to do is attach this wire, a couple of wraps, make sure it's not too long. I could pull it just like that and get it nice and tight. Also helps me build a little bit of a taper in the body. And I put the wire in my little material holder here in the meantime. Now I actually like this little curved hook. I like that my caddis fly isn't so straight. I'm using black thread, but any thread will work. I have so many colors. I have olives and browns and gray. I have a ton of different thread, but I don't know. I like this black thread for this fly. So then for the body, I'm using SLF in a tan color. Just gonna put a little wax on my line. Just to help it stay there. You don't need a lot of dubbing at all. but I am going to build a little bit of a tapered body with the dubbing. Start with that. You can always add. I like to tighten it as I go. Gives me a better sense of what I'm doing. A little more wax, a little more dubbing. This is such an easy tie. This is such a simple fly, and they're so much fun to use. I mean, honestly, I'm a Florida boy, so I'm a streamer guy from birth. But I love topwater fishing, whether it's fishing poppers in Florida or dry flies in Scandinavia. I think it's exciting as hell when you get that topwater bite. And I like this now. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take, I have this little pack for Hackel feathers in brown, which I think is a nice contrast. I'm just gonna pick out a feather. It doesn't have to be anything super duper long. None of these are super long. So I'm just gonna pick out, the hard part here is isolating one feather. I got one here. I'm going to carefully remove it from the pack. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel off the end a little, exposing the stem, just like that, just like that. And there's every feather has an inside and an outside, like I say. So I want to put this feather inside towards the hook shank. So I'm going to give it a couple of wraps. Lock it in good. And I got nice and lucky there that I don't have to trim anything. There's no tag end remaining. So now I'm going to use my Hackel plier. I'll get this out of the way a little. Now, I could use the rotary device. I might actually. I don't normally use the rotary when I do this. I normally just take the Hackel around. Actually, I'm just going to take the Hackel around, I think. Do it the old-fashioned way. And I just bring my Hackel feather to the rear, all the way to the back. And once I'm all the way to the back, then I take my wire, capture it. Now this is interesting. A lot of people ask, how do you bring your wire up without trapping all the hairs? The truth is, I don't even think about it. I just wrap as if the Hackel wasn't even there. I just wrap, and yeah, I probably trap a couple, but not enough to notice, and certainly not enough to worry about. So now I need to capture that wire, which I just did. There we go, the wire is nice and captured. Now I don't use any kind of pliers, I just work my wire and it breaks right off. That's actually the best way, because if you cut it with a pair of pliers, then you end up with a little sharp edge that could cut you off. You just don't want that sharp edge. So now we got to make the wing. For the wing, I'm going to use a little deer hair. A lot of people use elk, deer, elk, whatever you want. You don't need a lot. So I take an amount. I'll show you the amount here in a second. It's hard to show. But I cut it off my little patch of deer hair. And then I take a comb You could do it with your fingers, and I make sure I remove the underbrush here, the guard hairs. So we don't need any of the guard hairs. So take all that away. Then I take what's remaining and I put them in my stacker. And you don't need to do a lot. A little stacking, a dozen or so. That should be enough. Carefully bring them out so all your tips should be aligned. There's one that looks a little weird there, but that's okay. For the most part, all my tips are now aligned. So now what I do is I measure. So I don't want it longer than the shank. So right there, that's the perfect length right there. So I carefully, fingers on fingers, and I take it, and then I take my scissors and I trim off the remaining as straight as possible. Just like that. Now I give my bobbin a little counterclockwise spin. It's so simple. I put the remaining right behind the eye. 2 turns. Make sure I like it, which I do. And now when I pull towards me. Oh, my thread broke. That's a little bit of a disaster. What do I have ready? I have a little bit of white ready. I come in here with a little bit of white, and it won't matter because I will be able to turn this white brown. Wow, that was a bad spot for the thread to break. That's a good little lesson learned there to everyone, to have an extra spool ready. Give it a counterclockwise spin, and we're going to try this again. Right behind the eye. Just like that. Couple of turns, couple of wraps, and now you're going to pull tight. Never letting go of the wing. I'm going to pull that nice and tight. And there it is. Beautiful. Now what I need to do now, since I switched to white thread, so I don't really want white thread, so I need to find a marker. So I'm going to pause the video. I'll be right back. I don't have my markers handy right now, and I'm going to come back with a marker. All right, so welcome back. So now I have a marker and a sip of my rum and coke. That was actually a very lucky and fortunate save. I think that it's important to notice that by doing it the way I do it, the eye of the hook is exposed. So you won't have a problem when you're actually tying this to your fly line. So take a marker and color your thread. This is a big reason why I use white very often, because I can easily turn this white into any thread color I want. So now I'll do a couple of turns. Then you go 45 degrees and 45 degrees again. So now I am around the eye of the hook, and this is where we're going to do our whip finish. And there it is. One caddis fly with a great save. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you learned something there. That was a great save. We were fortunate there. But I think it looks great, and I think that this will definitely fish and catch fish. and brown trout, grayling, rainbows, you name it. That's a good little fly right there. So I hope you enjoyed it, and you can just remember, you can tie this exact same fly, just keep going smaller hook sizes, because you definitely want to have 12s and 14s and 16s with you, because sometimes the fish don't want these. Sometimes they want that size 14. So keep that in mind. I always start big and I work my way to a smaller all the time. All right, thank you for watching. Hit that like and subscribe, and see you on the next video.